Hi, welcome to today's episode. We have a special guest with us today, Ms. Shruti from the Wingman, now known as Clari Software. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Rudy, and excited to be here.
Excellent. I'm excited to have you here on the show today. You and your team have been one of the biggest secret weapons in sales that we've been using over the last several years to help us do tens of millions of dollars of sales for our clients, and really excited to finally interview you and talk about AI and how we're integrating AI with sales today. But before we do, I wanted to share a couple of bio points with our audience about you, which is really cool. Shruti a really interesting person. She's worked across very different industries, including life science research, investment banking, technology, investing, fintech, and now sales AI. And she's also a certified life coach through the Erickson Coaching. So, it's really neat perspective from Shruti on how do we combine the human components of sales with technology, right? You're literally from the technology industry. And I think you're on the cutting edge of sales and AI. So that's why I'm excited to have you on today.
Absolutely. And I think it's really exciting to be talking to this audience, because I think I talk to, tech companies and teams all the time. But speaking to people who also work a lot more on the human side of things is always exciting.
Yeah, most of our people who listen to this in some way, shape, or form are also coaches, either coaches or educators. They have programs. And one of the things that I oftentimes hear when I work with our clients is, hey, we want to have more sales. That's why we're hiring a sales team, or that's why we have a sales team. We want to have more sales at our events. But we don't want to damage our reputation, right? We don't want something said about us that it's going to get back to us and make us look bad or feel bad. And one of the things that I've discovered with this software is it's not only, and you're going to talk about this in detail, but not only has it been helpful in as a training tool, but more than anything, it's helped us create a high level of quality assurance to make sure that what's being sold is what's being promised, right? And when people sell things that are $10,000 to $100,000, there's a high level of expectations that go with that. And one of the things I learned is that the upset that happens with customers is when their reality doesn't meet up their expectations. So we've used this Wingman tool through several virtual events, dozens of virtual events over the last several years, to be able to make sure that, hey, what our client once said about them and their program is what's actually being said and what's actually being sold, not more, not less. So I wanted to put that out there upfront because I know that's top of mind. We want more sales, but we also want to make sure that the quality assurance is there and that the team's being trained properly. So, Shruti, I'm curious to hear from you. We're talking about sales and AI. Tell us a little bit about your story and kind of what brought you to where you're at now as a CEO of the Wingman software.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've always been very intrigued by technology because it feels like, that secret weapon that can help us do much more than what we think is possible, right? And so to that extent, when I started working at a fintech company in a more sales type of role, I realized that there were a bunch of things that were kind of getting broken in terms of the communication. And that's what triggered me to start Wingman, which is now Clari Copilot. But one of those things that I felt strongly about was the fact, that you mentioned, what the customer is told at the time of sale often, lands up being different from the expectations and from what they actually get served, right? And that could be both ways. One is I might have said something and the other person interpreted it differently, right? Or it could be that I tried to oversell, right? And both of those can be a problem. When we initially started building the software, we actually came across a third version of this, which is somebody underselling, right? So you often don't realize what might be the unsaid questions when people are trying to sell something, right? Because those could be like trust questions. Those could be questions that people are too polite to ask. But if you actually look at a conversation over a period of time and you realize what are the patterns, you realize that often there are unsaid trust questions that you need to just coach your team to actually proactively answer, because people might not even ask those, right? So that is, sometimes if you don't do that, you land up underselling yourself. But those were some of the problems that we were facing. Of course, the second part of it is just the disconnect that happens between what the feedback that you're getting from your customers versus how you perceive the market perceives you, right? So I wanted to bring all of those elements together, and that's the starting of Wingman. And today, I think that has evolved a lot just because the technology has evolved so much in the last 5 years. I would say that, a lot of things that the technology can do today, even if you had asked me as a founder of a company in the space, I would have said, this is not going to be possible in 5 years. But today, so much of that is not just possible, but possible at a really, really good level.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is, you've had a diverse background that ultimately has led you to this moment where things that were not possible in the past are not possible when it comes to sales. And you haven't said this word yet, but conversation intelligence. And now on the leading edge of AI, right? Because I know when I first started using Wingman, it was a few years ago, and I had this idea of like, hey, we can have enough intelligence that we could have some semblance of an AI, right? Some semblance of a mechanism to give us intelligence that we could use to improve our process. And now, with 3 years later, with all this data, now we have, tools like ChatGPT and other AI tools, and you're now merging these two, right, to create a world-class platform. So I'm curious to hear from you, Shruti. I know our audience is eager to hear about this. Like, what is conversational intelligence, right? And how are you combining that now with AI, with what's currently happening, what's now possible?
Absolutely. So I would define conversation intelligence as, intelligence that you try to derive from conversations that are happening, typically between a business and a customer interface, right? Now, this involves like 3 steps. One is, of course, recording or getting access to that conversation with good quality audio. The second step is being able to transcribe that voice into text, right? And then the third step is being able to look at patterns from all of the text that you're collecting so that you're able to either give insights or answer questions, basis the fact that you now have all of these conversations recorded, transcribed, and filed, using technology. So that's at the baseline what conversation intelligence does. And today with AI, right, the questions that people are beginning to ask of these conversations has changed from, earlier people would be happy to say, can I search for certain keywords, right? Could I maybe search for a time where maybe my salesperson swore on a call, right? But today, I think the type of stuff that AI allows us to do is, one, you're able to actually just summarize your entire conversation. So at the end of a 45-minute call, I could actually just get a summary that I could quickly read through in 30 seconds. And it gives me a quick context of what happened in that meeting, right? And people use this in many different ways. 2 is it's able to also, you could use it to give you live feedback on the call. So I don't want to go on a long monologue. I could have the AI tell me that, hey, you've been speaking for too long. It knows that, this is this particular speaker who's speaking. It's going to give that particular person the monologue alert, etc. The third thing it can do is it can also give you nudges and battle cards, all right, which are live cues that show up during the call. But today with AI, we can actually take like, a 1-page piece of content and condense that into 3 bullet points that will show up as nudges during the call. And then, of course, overall, from an insights perspective, people are able to ask much more complex questions from all of this conversation data. So you no longer have to just rely on like asking, was this keyword present? You can actually begin to ask questions like, okay, show me the times when, people were frustrated in this context, right? Because the sentiment analysis today is so good. You can also ask questions like, okay, show me everywhere where we had some negotiations around price. And that doesn't have to be just based on specific keywords. That is just based on the understanding of language and, looking at transcripts as a whole in a much wider context. So it's just incredible what AI can do today.
Yeah, your software has so many bells and whistles in the back end of it. And, I have to highlight this for our audience. On the surface level, it looks like another note-taking platform, right? And there's a few different note-taking platforms out there, right? It's a little thing that shows up in your Zoom calls and what have you, or other digital meetings, and it gives you notes, right? And a recording, but it's so much more than that. right? As you were mentioning, the search functions, the backend to be able to go specifically and look for, and this can be trained and programmed, like, how often were objections given? What were the objections? I can click a button and go to exactly where in the call. So instead of having to go and listen to 10 or 20 hour-long calls, I can do a quick filter, and in 10 minutes, I can review what the objections were. In fact, it's something I want to highlight for our audience, because I thought it was so cool that we set up a filter on our end where we could see on our sales team how many objections certain people were getting. And we were able in a dashboard to see, okay, so-and-so is getting this many objections out of this many calls. And we were able to correlate that, hey, the people that were getting the most objections were actually also getting the most sales, right? And that was something that people know hypothetically. Like if you get objections, it means people are interested and you know how to handle them, you get a sale. We're able to show that quantifiably, and not only that, but we are able to figure out what were those objections. And we're able to take those objections and to train them to the rest of the team. In fact, one of the things that we would oftentimes do is, as soon as we would get a sale, we would go and get the recording, analyze it, figure out what were the top parts of it, and then we would share that with everybody else. So now the team is also becoming more intelligent, right? So it's not just the AI that's becoming more intelligent, but like the team itself is able to learn from each other's calls, what works and what doesn't work. So the amount of learning overall that happens with the platform is exponential. So I had to share that because it's been so helpful for us.
That's great to hear. And yeah, I think peer learning is definitely a big thing that, today businesses should aspire to, because one of the reasons that we've heard salespeople leave is, especially the top salespeople leave because they feel that they're not learning anymore. And the more learning opportunities we can create through, such options, it really helps everyone.
Yeah, that's big. There's definitely a big emphasis of that on our end. And because we have the platform, we are able to teach and learn and coach and train much more effectively versus a shot in the dark, which is, in my experience, most of the time, most companies, most businesses, most teams are just doing shots in the dark, and it's not very specific. The key thing, you mentioned this earlier, is the talk to listen ratio. That is so powerful to be able to see on average who's talking more, what percentage is the prospect or the salesperson. And we can very quickly correlate, a lot of the effectiveness to, hey, are we presenting or are we asking great questions, right? Is the customer engaged or not engaged? And all this intelligence comes very quickly with your platform. So I'm putting myself in the shoes of the audience now, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a lot of really cool features and benefits, but at the end of the day, one, what's the future of this when it comes to AI, and how can I make money, right? How can I grow my business? And I'd be curious to hear from you as far as what are maybe some of the where you see the future is going. Maybe that's always good to see where the future of AI is going when it comes to sales, and then maybe your platform, where it's going, and how where you see the opportunities at right now. And ultimately, how can people make more money in their businesses?
Absolutely. I think, so I would divide how AI is going to impact sales into maybe two buckets, right? One bucket of tasks are things that we expect salespeople to do, but we know that they are grunt work, right? And there, I believe everybody is always eager to try and automate, because not only do you get to save time with your salespeople, what you also get is the ability to be much more, have much more reliable data, right? So things like, could I automate, capturing notes? Could I automate, filling out my CRM? Those are the tasks that AI, of course, can do much better, because they're not going to get bored of writing notes, right? It's not going to suddenly feel that, should I just go out this evening rather than spending another 35 minutes on updating my CRM, right? So I think that bucket of tasks is easy to see, right? Why it should get automated, right? And most people are supportive of it. And today, with even just the ChatGPT specific example, right? Earlier, the challenge was that we didn't have AI that could understand what was actually being spoken in the conversation, to the extent that it couldn't tell you you couldn't tell it, go and update these 5 fields, and could it find the information related to those 5 fields if it wasn't specific keywords within like a 30-minute call, right? But today, because the language models are so much better, you can actually have AI that is able to say, hey, this is where you discuss pricing and this is the price you quoted, right? This is where you talked about, the details of the product or the course, and this was the course that they chose, right? So this is so this is one part of it, right? And I believe that part is going to get to, close to 100% automation, where the humans are only reviewing whatever is going in rather than actually typing out that information. Then there's a second category of tasks, which are more somewhat creative or have a bigger human aspect to it, right? Where I think the roles are going to be reversed, where the AI is going to help us with having better baseline, better benchmarks, better checks, right? And the humans are still going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? So an example would be, is the human being actually going to go and speak on the call? Yes, but the AI could be the one telling you that, oh, I see that the energy is sagging on the other side. Maybe, or I see that they're getting distracted. Do you want to maybe, pause, ask a question, switch something, etc., right? So there it could be that the AI is giving more suggestions and then the human being is able to overrule those suggestions. Another example, just in cold outreach, right? We all send out a ton of cold emails. And so far, either those emails have been, largely templatized, or they have been entirely handcrafted, right? Today, what we are increasingly being able to do is tell the AI, hey, this is the profile of Rudy. You go look at his LinkedIn profile, what all he has done. And this is my product's website. This is a summary of what my product does. Now, craft for me a cold outbound email, which is humorous and includes these two elements. And this is the call to action that I want in that. And it'll draft you a superb email. But of course, you would want your human being to go and review the email, tweak it, stuff like that. So I think there are definitely repetitive tasks, which either, because of boredom reasons, human beings can only do a certain level of repetition well. For those reasons, everybody's supportive of them being taken away. But what we are not realizing is that there are a bunch of things that we also think are very creative tasks, like writing a completely personalized email, which the AI can do a superb job with. Maybe it can do 70% today, but I'm sure in a year it can do 90% of it. And that's kind of where you need the human beings to become better at thinking about how do I get to become friends with the AI, where I can, understand how do I create a good prompt, what is my workflow with the AI, rather than trying to resist it. And I think once we get to that point, it helps all of us become more productive and, to your point, make more money, right? Because if I can, write really good emails, instead of just 5 of them in a day, if I can write 50 of them with the help of AI, then, I'm sure that we can make more money.
Yeah, I love what you highlight there. I mean, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing you say is that it helps people be more productive. And if you're more productive, you're able to make more money. In fact, there was a study that was done just a couple months ago by Harvard Business Review that stated that the #1 application for AI in businesses will be in their sales processes, exactly what you're doing and the solution that you provide to businesses. And the ability to help make your salespeople more productive is key, because you and I both know, Shruti, that like oftentimes the best salespeople, they don't like to do the administrative work, right? But if we can put tools around them and a team around them to allow them to shine and just do what they do best, and then not have to put in 35 minutes at the end of the day into a CRM, like you mentioned, it'll make a world of difference for their morale and their productivity, and ultimately will result in higher commissions for them and higher revenues for the business. So yeah, I'm really, really eager and excited to see, what your platform continues to do in this space. I do believe that you are on the very cutting edge of what's possible between conversation intelligence and AI. And for our listeners who are listening to this, if you're thinking, hey, I don't have a big team yet, this maybe it's not for me, you can use this tool if you're an individual entrepreneur and you just want to make yourself more productive and give yourself a way to get into the AI game and start to gather that intelligence, which you can do so much with. or if you have a massive sales team, this platform will save you so many hours of productivity and make you so much more efficient to be able to train, manage your team, and your team itself will, as Shruti said, will find the value of the learning opportunity, and it'll increase your retention as well as your sales. So, Shruti, any other comments you want to make about the platform for our listeners?
No, thanks so much for, I think, that summary of what the platform can do for sales teams. And I think maybe just one thing to add, especially for people who are maybe smaller businesses, is when you start out as an individual, very often you feel that you're the only person who can really sell the business the way, the way you understand it, the way you have the belief in it. And, when you get your first salesperson or, your third salesperson, you always struggle to kind of transfer that knowledge. And I think that's, again, another place where the software can help you. And the second part of it is, you don't want your business to get misrepresented, right? And very often you understand what are the patterns with which people might be misrepresenting it, right? It could be, oh, I guarantee blah, 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 or, I'll give you a money back guarantee or things like that. And you can literally set up alerts for those type of things so that, if somebody is overselling, mis-selling, the common type of complaints that you might be receiving from customers, you will immediately get an email in your inbox saying, hey, this is the snippet of the call. This is where, somebody said this word, and you can go back, review it, and course correct immediately.
Yeah, that's big. That's really, really, really big. And Shruti, for our listeners who would like to learn how they can maybe do a demonstration of your software, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so we are now part of Clari, and you can go look for Clari Copilot on Google. You can just search for Clari Copilot, or you could go to the website clari.com.
Okay, we'll be sure to include those clari.com and the Clari Copilot links in the show notes for today's show as well. Highly recommend. Check it out and do a demo with them and get into the platform and see what's possible. I think the number one thing people can be doing right now to prepare for the wave of AI that we're in right now is be recording all of their conversations and get them transcribed and start to gather that database, build that data set. And that's what we've been able to do with Clari, Wingman, now Clari. Over the last 3 years, we've been able to gather over 250,000 hours of sales conversations. And we're only now beginning to understand what's now possible with that data, thanks to your platform. So I encourage every single person listening to this, even if you're an individual entrepreneur, get started with this platform or some way of starting to catalog and record your knowledge when it comes to your sales conversation, so that you can use that in an infinite number of ways with AI. So thank you again, Shruti, for being a guest on our show. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.